Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to chat with you today about the Master of Supply Chain Management program. This session will be about 30 minutes long, and we're going to go through not only tips and tricks for the application, but also hear from our very own program director, David Johnson, on his experience of teaching the Master of Supply Chain Management, where our graduates are today, talking about different opportunities that you can take part in through experiential learning, and some of the unique aspects of this program. We have the Q&A icon that can be found at the very bottom of the screen. So as we go through the presentation, feel free to use that. We're happy to have applicants also chime in on certain questions that they might have in the application session or in the application section of where you're at right now, as well as folks who have not applied yet, but might have questions about what this program is all about. My name is Juanita Mwanga. I'm the Recruitment and Communications Coordinator for the program. I would love to connect with you further if you have any particular questions that you have. You might be a little bit more sensitive. You might not want to type them in the Q&A. That's totally fine. I've provided my email address here for you. Remember to like, share, subscribe on our social media accounts as well. I've provided a few different links that you can read through after this presentation, but without further ado, let's jump into what makes this program very unique and what the Master of Supply Chain Management program is. So we are here today to give you a brief overview of Schulich's Master of Supply Chain Management degree. This innovative master's degree is designed for those who aspire to rapidly advance their career in the supply chain industry. The program can be completed full-time or part-time. Full-time would be 12 months, whereas part-time would take a little bit longer, as you can see here, 24 months, but that allows for you to continue working while still being a student. The supply chain globally is very, very much complex, and as we can see, there's quite a need for it today in the industry. Some of the aspects that make this program unique is it will give you advanced standing for the CSCMP, which is designated by Supply Chain Canada. We also are able to give you a co-curricular aspect where it's very interactive. This program is not for those who are looking for a bit of the theory base, but there is a little bit touched on that. It's more so for folks who are interested in hitting the ground running and really starting their career. As I said earlier, we have an awesome treat for you today. We have the program director, David Johnson, who is here today to answer questions as well as give you a bit more of the nitty-gritty of what this program offers. A bit about David. He is the acting director of the Master of Analytics and Artificial Intelligence program, as well as the Supply Chain Management program. He's the director of George Winston Center for Sustainable Supply Chains, as well as George Winston's Research Chair in Sustainable Supply Chain. He has completed not only an undergrad in business administration, but also an MBA and a PhD, Ivy School of Business. David, do you want to wave and say hello? And talk a little bit about what the program has and why supply chain is so interesting.
Yeah, I just want to give you a little bit of a feel for the kind of philosophy of the program. As Juanita has said, there's theory and there's application, and to build the supply chains that companies and organizations like governments and not-for-profits need for the future is they actually have to take some of the best of our theory and turn it into application, sometimes into new business models. You can see the success of that when we do things like omni-channel. That's what you would be more familiar with as basically buying online. And we saw a lot of that during the pandemic. But let me just do 5 things you need to know here, just a quick overview. And I think that will give you a bit of a feel of how we marriage the application, the theory, the technical parts with what I call the relational parts that are so important to manage a supply chain. That's either upstream to your suppliers or downstream to your consumers. So Juanita, could you advance the slide for me, please?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so we've got 5 things I'd like to emphasize. The importance of focusing on customers, integrating the flow of information end to end, creating and maintaining relationships, being lean, but also being agile, and performing for more than one bottom line. Next slide, please, Juanita. Yeah, so the focus on the customer is, supply chains exist basically to satisfy a customer or to serve a customer. And sometimes that customer for a lot of supply chains folks is not the end customer, the people that the sales force goes out and engages with. It's sometimes an internal customer. So the purchasing people purchase for an internal customer, which could be production and a manufacturing. On the customer, in the case of for our government supply chains, think of either the military or public procurement, they're procuring also for internal customers. That's the people that might put the trucks on the road to plow the roads up here in Canada. But it's very important to realize that we are customer centric in what we do, and that's why supply chains exist, is to have that delivery of product where it needs to go, right cost, right time, right quality. We also know that if there's bad service to customers, when suddenly your parcel that you ordered through Amazon or Tencent doesn't show up for you, you know that basically the customer could be lost. As we know, it's very difficult to earn back the trust of customers once you've lost them. So it's very important that we actually be able to deliver on time, at the end of the supply chain, and manage all those relationships to make sure what we promise to the customer gets to the customer, whether that be an internal one or the end one. Next slide, Juanita. Yeah, so how we get that to happen is we just have to integrate the flow of information end to end. We've got a pretty good idea that, we move downstream from the supply chain. We starts with the mines producing the metals that we use to make goods for us that we manufacture. Somewhere along the way, they've got distributors and wholesalers and retailers and direct ship to the customer and all sorts of options for getting it from A to B. But what we need to do to make that happen increasingly in companies is not a series of isolated handoffs manually done through telephone, through paper and that sort of stuff. Is we have to have an integrated flow of information, of handoffs from one organization to another organization, make sure those goods flow. So when we talk about digital transformation in the supply chain, it's critical that at that information flow, that we get it to the right people. And that includes the people that increasingly are doing the more analytic side of supply chain management, what we often refer to as data scientists that are in organizations figuring out what's the best routing, what's the best scheduling, where's the best suppliers. All that involves integrating the flow of information end to end. There's a bit of IT involved with that. There's also a lot of data management involved with that. And of course, making sure there's relationships underpinning that to supply quality, accurate information to the right decision maker. Next slide, Juanita, please. So once again, more fundamental, how do you get the information flowing to get those happy customers and that product flowing end to end through the system? Well, we've got to create some great relationships, and particularly supply chain has historically had to have very good relationships with suppliers if you want an efficient, agile, and responsive supply chain. So we spend a lot of time relationship management. This is kind of the soft stuff in some cases when we talk about things like digital transformation, about the nuts and bolts of how we run a logistics function, how we run purchasing, or how we do demand planning. Underpinning that is we have good relationships with people, suppliers, and customers to trade information back and forth and to synchronize that information. And of course, that's going to be something that we emphasize quite a bit in the program. It's just not, the technical bits and pieces of doing the job and what those processes are in organizations, but how do we get the people working in it, whether it's in our organization, upstream or downstream in the supply chain. And of course, increasingly, as we saw, it's important to make sure you get all those relationships, not only domestically, but also internationally working. When you have an extensive supply base where you might be, say, as a retailer, getting 30 to 40% of the products you sell offshore in North America, whether it's in some part of Southeast Asia or increasingly in Latin America and that sort of thing, is obviously you have to learn how to manage relationships cross-culturally and to deal with the issues of working at a distance, physically and informationally. Next slide, Juanita. So one thing we learned, of course, in the last 16, 18 months, of course, is you got to be lean, but there's limits to lean. You also have to be agile. If you only have one supplier, that might give you great economies of scale and lowest price. But suddenly, if that supplier is at risk because maybe their plant shuts down because their workers are infected with COVID-19, or there's a constraint because of maybe one of the ports that you're shipping into also has similar problems, then what you find out is you don't have satisfied customers because nothing is flowing to them. So how do you basically not only be lean and efficient and that sort of thing and get really great prices on the products you sell to customers? How do you also deal with the issue that, at the bottom line for being a supply chain professional, you have to secure the flow of that information going to that customer. The customer doesn't get it, a great deal on the product just doesn't matter. And if that product also doesn't have great quality, then of course you're not going to have a viable product. So increasingly we've learned that, of course, we have to think about the network of suppliers, how we connect ourselves with those suppliers, and how we connect ourselves forward to the customer. And sometimes we have to reconfigure because, not only do we have supply disruptions like COVID-19 happening, but we're going to have things like increasingly extreme weather events. In Canada, we've had an extreme weather event where we've had a heat wave on the West Coast, which is almost unheard of. And this has caused situations where businesses have to shut down, shipments are delayed. How do we reconfigure our logistics network to compensate for that sort of thing? So next slide, Juanita. As you can probably tell from my title, where I'm the new research chair in George Weston Research Chair in Sustainable Supply Chains, and I'm also a director of the center that goes along with that, is that I'm very passionate about the issues involved with social and environmental sustainability. This decade will be the decade where we come to terms with how we balance people, planet, and profitability, and not only for-profit organizations, firms, but also in government. And of course, what this creates as a challenge for supply chain people is not only we're concerned about efficiency or lowest cost or unit cost, and we're not only concerned about on-time delivery, and we're not only concerned about, for instance, having the lowest cost inventory profile, and we're not just concerned about getting the right quality in our suppliers. We're now concerned about, well, what do the suppliers really do when they manufacture those products? Are those products being manufactured with a low carbon footprint? Are they being manufactured where they are doing right by their local communities in terms of keeping their workers safe and providing a sustainable standard of living for those people? So it's getting a little more complicated to figure out what the bottom line is of supply chain. So when we think of all the decisions we might make in purchasing and logistics and demand planning, and how to design strategically our network, we start now adding in a few other things that we have to trade off or look for synergies between those things. So those are kind of 5 things that are shaping a little bit of what we do in our classrooms day to day. And it's kind of the overall strategic vision of what we see ourselves doing. Now I can go on and talk into a lot of detail, but let's move on here because we want to get to that Q&A and hear what you folks are interested in talking about or knowing about our program. This was just an aside. I wanted to mention too that one thing I'm very impressed with our Master Supply Chain students is, yes, they want a career and they want a really good career and they want it be well paying and they want to be promoted, but they also want to give back to the communities. They want to be members of communities. They want these communities to be great places to raise a family and get on with life. And our first year, of course, our first graduating class dealt with the onset of COVID-19. And I was so proud. We had a whole team of our alumni stepped up just right out of the program in June of last year. And we went to work for the city of Toronto, which has over 6 million people that it services in the greater Toronto area. And we went to work with them trying to make sure that we could figure out the best way to run their supply chains to get PPE to the workers. So the workers for the city could supply all those essential services, ranging from fire, police, healthcare, to all the other services that keep the population safe and happy. And we did a great job. This is actually the public domain. You can look up the reports that we wrote and how it was mentioned, of course, by the premier of the province that Schulich School of Business is situated in. So I look forward also getting you folks involved in the new center, which was formally announced a month and a half ago, and getting involved with other issues that are not only about running efficient, agile supply chains, but also building and supporting our communities wherever those might be, either here in Canada or abroad. Next slide, Juanita.
Now, the timeline, which I'm sure all of you are curious to know about, what does it look like being a full-time versus a part-time student? Well, applicants are, of course, open for May 2022 and will close later on in the new year. But we do have a number of different opportunities that you're able to participate in, and this is really the timeline of how that would be streamed. So full-time study would start in May, so of next year, and you would complete the program within 12 months. You would be in a mixed classroom, which means that you would be in a classroom with not only full-time applicants, but also folks who are part-time. All right. So once you graduate in June 2023, Yahoo, walk the stage, have flowers in your hands, and go on to do amazing things in this world. Part-time students, allowing for you to do it on your own time, work with a schedule that is incredibly flexible, taking classes not only in morning and afternoon, but also having classes open to you in the evening. Class starts again in May. It's about 24 months to complete. That's a rough estimate there. Mixed classrooms, full-time and part-time students, and you're graduating the following year of June 2024. Now, the classroom structure, I think, is what's most unique about this program. Very rigorous, very, very much concentrated. Supply chain program is one of a kind in Canada, and it includes a combination of not only fundamental, but also functional and practical courses in supply chain management, really cultivating a two-term collaborative consulting project in which students work in a real business, developing recommendations for client organizations. And this is how our students are really able to get that experiential learning. They do this in a group capacity and execute an idea. The program is designed for students who aspire to be, again, hitting the ground running and going into rapid career advancement from entry level in logistics, purchasing, operations, customer service, to being in more senior management positions, and doing really end-to-end design, coordination of an organization that is specialized in supply chain, such as Vice President of Supply Chain Management. We have quite a lot of different faculty members that, of course, are experts in their field and are really there to give you insight as well as be there to support you throughout the process. Not only do we have faculty members that we're seeing here, but we also have faculty members that are seasonal. And I believe David is now back. David, would you like to come on and talk a little bit about our faculty members?
Yes. There we go. Sorry for the interruption. I think I'm somewhere on video all right. Whoops.
There we go. Now we're able to see you.
Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yes. Sorry for that. We had a little bit of a drop here on my end. Yeah. So what you have on your screen here is actually I just picked 4 of our instructors here, and I like the kind of mix of them. By the way, they're all Ashley up in the far right corner is our marketing person, and actually he's from another area. We like the cross-functional integration that we offer in our program, i.e. it's important most of you realize that supply chain is really an amalgam of different functions that used to be quite separate up to about 25 years ago, 20 years ago. So, and there's still some perspectives that still hasn't integrated into itself, such as basically how to take what the sales and marketing people do in organizations, or the people that interface with the key stakeholder in the organization, such as in a hospital, that would be patients, or in the case of government, taxpayers. And so it's important to understand what the mission of the organization in that sense. So Ashley does that. Now he's a person who runs, he's a consultant, marketing consultant. So he's very much on the applied side and runs his own kind of business doing that sort of stuff when he's not with us. Now, the other fellow right beside him, Johnny Rungtuthanathem, is the Canada Research Chair in Supply Chain Management. So he's an outstanding researcher in supply chain management who has joined Schulich about 3 years ago. And he works on issues of supply disruption, which is very timely, as you can imagine. We just went through over the last 16 months. But he also teaches in our operations management, of course, one of the foundational courses that underlie supply chain. Adam on the bottom left-hand corner is our modeling specialist, operations research specialist, and runs our coordination, demand, and planning course, and does a lot of the more quantitative side of things, whether it's trying to figure out an optimal schedule, optimal routing of trucks in a logistical network, trying to do revenue management, dealing with applications of artificial intelligence to doing things like forecasting. Marcus Beal on the right-hand side is also a full-time faculty member, just like both Adam and Johnny. Actually, I showed his Magnus here, but it's really, we just call him Johnny. Marcus Beal is also another full professor at Schulich, and he specializes in transportation, and he was actually a captain in the Army doing logistical functioning. So before he became an academic, and doing a lot of work in sustainability. By the way, Marcus is actually going to be on sabbatical for part of the time when you folks, he will be back probably by the time you folks come back, join us at Schulich. And he actually is interesting. His substitute for at least for a few months with us is the vice president of distribution for Canadian Tire, one of our largest retailers. So who knows all about the logistical networks and strategies. So let's just introduce you to some of the team. There's 12 different instructors in our program. And as you can see, they're a mix of academics, which is more so here. And then a lot of our other folks are working professionals in industry, either consulting or working for or large organizations doing supply chain related tasks. So that's a little bit of a introduction, and you'll note the combination once again of what Juanita talked about. There's applied and theoretical insight. We've got people that are looking at the frontier of where supply chains are going. But we also got people that know what people are doing now in terms of practice.
Awesome. Thanks so much, David. So what also makes this degree quite unique is that it is supported strongly in the industry. We are recognized by Supply Chain Canada, Canada's largest network of supply chain managers, and it is a strong ally of the program. And a lot of our graduates will receive significant fast tracking towards the career within supply chains because they would be able to gain Supply Chain Canada's Certified Supply Chain Management Professional designation. This will equip students in the industry to be recognized and really able to go into their program knowing that it will provide recognition, but of course graduate and really, again, go into their career field quickly.
Juanita, I would add on to us, just maybe they didn't notice this on the website, which I think we just added it to it. We are now also certified for the Canadian Institute of Transportation and Traffic, or Traffic and Transportation, which is another designation, more in the logistics side of things that the graduates from our program get advanced standing to. And in case you're wondering what advanced standing means, it means it gives you it cuts down the cost of basically getting these certifications and fast tracks the time required to do that. The other reason why we make a fairly big deal about it and do a lot of partnering with these industrial associations is we're concerned about what happens to you after you graduate from the program. Your education doesn't stop there. Your networking to move on to that next job doesn't stop there. For our part-timers in the program, of course, they know this. They're looking to go to the next company, to the next level in their career. And of course, being hardwired into these associations, all the networking and some of the continuing education they do is very important.
David, would you like to talk about the George Winston Limited Center?
I could talk a lot about this, but I don't want to take too much time away from us answering questions from the folks on the call here, Juanita. Suffice to say, the focus of the center is going to be very firmly on that fifth slide or fifth idea that I gave you as to the focus of the Master of Supply Chain Management. My hope is as the center is implemented, that your our incoming class of MSCM students in next May will be able to be integrated into the educational activities of the center. Think of this as above and beyond what you've been learning in your classrooms. And we've already began experiments with that. And I think, Juanita, you have a slide with some of the conferences we've been sponsoring. I think it's the next slide.
No, the next slide is being a part of the supply chain management.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, so we've sponsored, the center's already sponsored a number of supply chain conferences in partnership with the Supply Chain Canada, digital transformation, environmental, sustainable supply chains, women in supply chain, and public sector supply chain. And the idea here is we want to be involved in shaping not only the futures of our students, but we want to be involved in shaping the future of the organizations that they will go into and providing them with what we call thought leadership. Anyways, and I love that picture, Juanita. Boy, I could look at that all day. This was the first cohort of Master Supply Chain students and some of their instructors, and our first get together on our orientation day together. And that was back a little while in 2019. So, and I'm really looking forward to seeing all those folks again when we get together to have a celebration of our return to normal and our return to the classroom and our return to having our network events at our campus. And as Juanita's probably told you, we've got a beautiful building and a beautiful addition to that building and a whole new wing where our center is based in. You can kind of see a little bit of the architecture in that picture. So yes, Juanita, over to you.
Thanks, David. So I'm sure that a lot of you are thinking, wow, this is so fascinating, and I can see that questions are popping off. So we'll quickly go through admissions requirements. So to apply for the MSCM, Master of Supply Chain Management, it's a rather quickly and easy process. Step one is to create a profile. Step two is to upload documents, and this includes unofficial transcripts, copies of transcripts if you haven't graduated just yet. If you have, require that you will send us your official transcript. Of course, also pay and submit your application. The components that are within the application we'll get to in a second, but I will say that we have opened up application for May 2022. It's on our Schulich website. Round one is starting right now, and it'll end in August 12th, 2021. Round two, October the 7th. Round three, November 25th. Then the final round of February 14th for round four. Notice that there's some stars here. So round two, it's strongly recommended and encouraged for international students to apply as soon as they're able to, in order to have a sufficient time to apply for your study permit. It's always ideal to start earlier versus later, so you can give yourself enough time and you're able to come into Canada ease and breeze. Of course, have our international relations team that is here to support you. You've been accepted and you're going through the study permit application. So we will be there to support you, but it's really important that you get your acceptance into the program so you can get started as soon as possible. And of course, with round four, we're seeing 2 stars, which is specifically for domestic students only. So late international applications longer accepted, just because it would be too hard to get the study permit in time and have you take classes in person. As David had said, this year, we've had a little bit of an interesting go at Schulich, and our applicants have come into the program and have done it online. They're doing that currently, and in the winter, we are going to be introducing full-time in-person classes, so not to worry. Once you are in our cohort for May 2022, this won't be something you have to worry about, as it usually is, being online and allowing to engage and interact with or cohort in person and with professors and have network opportunity. Now, the aspect of getting
one thing I would mention, I don't know whether you got to it, is as One of the things we learned over COVID-19, of course, is how to deliver online courses and how to serve students or in their education online. So the school is very committed to the idea of using this technology now that we're good at it, to actually help improve the quality of your learning experience. And one of the interesting things, I do all these exit interviews with all our students each year when they graduate to see how they what they thought of the program and what they'd like to see changed and other things done to make the alumni experience better for them. And one of the things that was interesting from the part-timers are students who are basically working for a living and taking care of their family, as well as going to school over a 2-year period, is of course they could see the advantages of just continuing to use this platform in a very selective way to allow them maybe not to come on campus all the time, to do certain parts of the classes offline, so I should say online or offline, and really begin to free up their time and allow them to better manage that work-life balance that's so important for them.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that insight, David. So in terms of admissions requirements for the program, that you have a GPA of a B+, there's no prerequisite courses that you need to take prior to. GRE or GMAT is also not required, but you will have to do 2 written essays, 2 video essays, and 1 timed written assignment. We also require you to submit 2 references. If you are somebody who's a newly graduate and maybe don't have a lot of work experience, not to worry, you don't have to provide a professional reference. If you are somebody who's been out of school for quite a while, 2 references that are professional is of course accepted. Work experience is recommended but not required. Part-time students must be employed in order to qualify for part-time study. Otherwise, you will need to be a full-time student. And then language proficiency is for folks who have not gone to an English medium school. Require you to submit IELTS or TOEFL results. As you can see here, 7.0 is the overall score for IELTS with no minimum of 6.5 in each section. TOEFL, 100 is the score with no minimum of below of 23 for each section. Now we do have advanced standing. That's another aspect of our program that's quite unique. So if you are somebody who has completed a BBA or an IBBA, so if you've done a undergrad in business administration, we will accept advanced standing, but only if it's been completed in North America within the last 10 years. This is the requirement in order to get advanced standing. If you are permitted with obtaining advanced standing status, then you would start in September. You would complete the program in 8 to 20 months. You can take classes in mixed class settings, as said with the other slide that I provided on not only part-time, but also full-time. So you would be in the classroom with both students. And you would complete your graduation for June 2023 or June 2024. Now, tuition fees to expect. International students, it's just over 80,000. Domestic students, it's just under 54,000. Great thing about the tuition is it does have quite a lot that's included within it. Not only are you getting access to some of the student services, but also some of the awesome support networks that David had mentioned. And of course, being able to participate in some of the unique aspects that Schulich is able to provide you with. For students who are a little bit nervous about the study permit aspect and you are international, again, we do have our international relations department, which is there to help you with your study permit. We have immigration lawyers that are there to support you, and that is absolutely free of charge to admitted students. Now, ways to fund your degree, incredibly important. Not only would we say consider savings, but we also have line of credit for international students. Of course, if you are a domestic student, there's OSAP and other local loans depending on where you are provincially. And then we also have the unique opportunity of allowing for you to work in part-time jobs, as well as, of course, taking advantage of some of the scholarships and bursaries that we have available to you. We have quite a lot of different financial scholarships that are there for both international as well as domestic students. You can find out more information on scholarships that are available at schulich.yorku.ca/financial-aid. So next steps would be to complete your application, complete it as soon as possible. Again, it's never too early to start. Strongly recommend for international students that are present and you are looking to apply. Great opportunity to start early so that you can get everything done ASAP. You can also find more information on different events that are taking place, join webinars, information sessions, as well as attend our open house virtually this year at schulich.yorku.ca/events. You can also meet other admission team members if supply chain management is something you're interested in, but maybe you're also thinking about different programs that are at Schulich. Feel free to go to schulich.yorku.ca/grad-inquiries, and a representative will email you about their respective programs that they manage. Now, if you do have inquiries about supply chain management, feel free to email me. There is my email address again. I will leave it up for a few seconds, but of course we can jump right into questions. I can see that the Q&A icon is bumping away, and you've also been entering in some of your questions in the chat, and Jessica has been answering them. Thank you so much, Jess. But for individuals who are looking at directing questions towards myself or David, please use the Q&A icon that can be found at the very bottom of your screen. So let's jump right in. So in terms of the second question I can see here from Victor, thank you so much, Victor, for your question. What scholarships opportunity are available for international students? We have an awesome opportunity for international students to not only be automatically entered into our entrance level scholarship, but we also have a number of different scholarships that are available. And I can actually send you a link of different scholarships if you're admitted, including those that are provided through the Canadian government, as well as York International. There's a plethora of different opportunities. And as said earlier, we do have a line of credit as well. So if financing your degree is something you're interested in and you want to get a little bit more information on that, please email me and I can send you a link of different services that we're able to provide you with. Okay, I see another question here. Are there any supply chain management students who are working while completing their studies? David, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, so if you go to the website, you'll see mentioned to full-time and part-time. So we have a cohort of each, or I should say our cohort has two of these groups. The part-timers, of course, take 2 years to go through the program versus the full-time students do 1 year. And to be in the part-time program, we admit only people that are working professionals. And they are balancing, as I mentioned earlier, work life, and of course, a lot of them have families, and they do 2 courses per term over 2 years.
Great, thanks so much, David. A question here about the admissions interview. When does this take place? Well, this is a really good question. Typically, admissions interviews take place right after you've completed your application. And because we're in the earlier stage, I can say confidently that we are unveiling admissions interviews very quickly. But as we go through the steps, sometimes it can take a little bit longer to get us to work through your application. This is why I say start early. It's always good because I have a lot of time to go through the applications and also make recommendations and, of course, invite you in to an admissions interview. It'll take place with me. It's 30 minutes. We'll go over your goals and also just highlight some aspects that make you unique. And then from there, it'll be passed on to the admissions committee, which includes David. And from there, they will make the final decision on your application. Great question. So another question here. I am graduating from university in December. Talk about conditional offers. So the way conditional offers work is we'll accept you, but it'll be conditional in terms of you need to meet set requirements in order to start the program at the start day of May 2022. Conditional offers can include providing an official transcript. It could also be completing a GRE or a GMAT, sometimes for some programs. Of course, in this program, it is not required, but it could also be maybe you haven't got all your references in, or you haven't completed university yet, and we need you to do that in order to be accepted. So no worries if you're completing university in December. I would say to still apply, but to provide the unofficial transcript of classes that you completed thus far. And if you are accepted, your conditional offer would be to provide a complete transcript, which would be an official transcript from the university, which will either be e-transferred to us, so you'd have to do an email transfer directly from the university, or the university can transcript to us directly. Great question.
Thanks, Juanita. I saw there's some other related questions in the chat that I just want to address as well. these are in regards to language proficiency. So some students are asking, when do I need to submit my English language proficiency? Is it part of the application or after? You can submit your test results after you submit your application, but we would recommend no more than 4 weeks from the deadline you applied to. We would want to see those results. So if you are planning to do an IELTS or planning to do a TOEFL, then you will put your intended test date into the application so we know when to expect those results from you. Now, only one thing to consider here is that TOEFL or IELTS is only required if your university degree was not taught in English. Okay, so if you studied your whole degree in English medium, you do not have to supply IELTS or TOEFL. And one more question around IELTS is, if one of your sections is 6, but overall is more than 7, can I still apply? So for this program, the requirements are 7.0 overall score and a minimum of 6.5 in each dimension. So if your score is only 1 below 1 point or half, 0.5 below in IELTS or 1 point below in TOEFL, you may still apply. Definitely, it could be something that is considered in a conditional offer, that you may be admitted, but it would be conditional on you meeting the requirements of the minimums for your English proficiency test. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Jessica. So more questions here on admissions requirements. Does the application process differ for students who do have a BBA or an IBBA, specifically students who are currently in Schulich's programs? Jessica, would you like to answer this one?
Sure thing. So for current or recent BBA or IBBA grads from Schulich, you could qualify for an application fee waiver. So please do reach out to us before you submit your application. Get in touch with Juanita. And secondly, Juanita, if you want to go backwards in the slides, just a few, there was a note on the advanced standing that students may be eligible for as well if they are BBA or IBBA students. So I just want to put that back on the screen. Here we go. So you may be eligible for advanced standing to term 2 of the program, which means, starting in fall instead of starting in summer. But again, reach out to Juanita, let her know your interest, let her know you are a Schulich grad or current student, and she can have a further conversation with you about, what your profile means and how to go through the application process.
Absolutely. Great question. Now, for students with minimal non-professional work experience, do you recommend 2 references to be only academic, or one can be for a non-academic professional reference and the other one can be academic? So our references are pretty straightforward. Again, we do need 2, as you had highlighted, but if you don't have work experience, it's fine to just provide 2 academic references. If you do have quite a lot of work experience, you've been out of academia for some time, it's fine to also submit 2 professional experiences. So either way, it's absolutely fine. Worked part-time, for instance, and you want to use professional work experience as one as your references and the other one as an academic, that's fine as well. So question here about applicants who have rolled over. So this individual has said, I applied last year, but unfortunately the space was already occupied, so my application was rolled over to 2021. Does this mean I'm automatically among the round 1 applicants? Yes, it does, Zainab. Thank you for that question. For those who are here today and are a part of our rolled over, you applied for May 2021, but your application was received either too late or you were waitlisted, and now you've been a part of the applicants who have rolled over for May 2022. You would be in the first round of applicants. If your application has not opened up, so it has not gone through the rollover stage, please email me. I believe myself and Jessica have gone through all of them, but if we have missed you, feel free to email me. I will need an updated resume as well as an updated unofficial transcript if you did complete any university classes, or if you are a part of the batch who is still completing your undergraduate degree and would like to include an updated transcript in your application. Always strongly recommended to do so. So again, email me for inquiries about that. So a question about students who have taken programming at Seneca College. This individual has said, I have done PGMD in supply chain management and logistics from Seneca in 2018 and was thinking about doing the Master of Supply Chain Management for advancing my career. Should I opt in to do this program, or should I do the MBA with specializations in operational management and information system or strategic management? Would Jessica and David like to come on for this?
Yeah, I would just mention, for anyone who wants sort of a more detailed profile review of their specific circumstances and their backgrounds, send Winnie an email with your resume so we can have a deeper, detailed view. And we can definitely talk about what program is going to fit you best. We've got a lot of different programs, including the MBA, including a number of other specialized master's programs. So we definitely want to make sure that you're choosing the program that fits you the best in terms of your experience and your career goals as well. So that's a deeper conversation we would have sort of offline or off of this platform, but please do send your email and your resume to Juanita, and she can have a detailed conversation with you on that.
David, would you like to add anything that might be unique about supply chain management for this individual who?
Jessica's points are well taken, and do take advantage of we have staff that can give you some insight to yourself, right? And you can explain your situation to them, and a lot of things are situational in terms of what's best. I'm obviously biased a little bit as to the value of the MSCM, and the MSCM is for people that are serious about supply chain management. We take it very seriously what we do. The applied in theory we talked about, and the MBA has a different positioning in terms of its value to people, and its biggest value, as it always has been, is being a general management person, particularly if you're switching fields too. I can see that as very valuable. But I think at the end of the day, as you know, I'm a university professor, and I'm not a salesperson. My job is to make sure that when people come into one of our programs, they advance their learning, and that learning advances them not only in their profession, but advances them as people, as the kind of cohort they want to hang out, the kind of people they need to hang out with, but also in terms of it takes them to the next level they need to get to. And I think that's, as I said, is very situational for different people. And I think, use the advisors, and when in doubt, look at all the facts, think about it, and talk it over with other people. And you can talk it over with me if you're wavering a little bit too. Yeah, we definitely want you to make the best decision that's going to fit what you need to have to get to the next level.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback off of that, David, Eno has a question about being somebody who has 9 years experience in procurement as well as supply chain management, working in warehouse operations. And he's wondering, would this program gear towards folks who have quite a number of years of experience in the field and really allow for them to advance their career? Or is it more so for folks who don't have a background in supply chain management and might be going into it for the first time?
It is both, and that's one of the things that eventually we will do is probably differentiate them a little bit into almost two streams. So far, we haven't had to do that, and it's been good because we have a fairly intimate and integrated and fairly diverse cohort of students. But our part-timers have a very common story to. I'm sorry, Juanita, what was the person's name?
Eno.
Pino?
Eno.
Oh, Eno. Yeah, your description is very similar to a number of our students over the last. So we're in our third cohort of part-timers, and that part component is growing in our program, and it's one that we strategically want to grow in it because of the huge talent gap out there in the middle management ranks. As you know, in supply chain, of course, the field is growing, but there's a cohort that's retiring and need to replace these middle managers to upper managers in the supply chain function. And so we do a lot of, we're increasingly thinking about how best on the education side to be able to complement the experience they have. One observation I would make is that often we find people coming to us who have maybe spent their 8, 9, usually, you know, somewhere between 5 and 10 years in the field in one silo of the supply chain: purchasing, logistics, demand planning, or on the maybe in the manufacturing side of things, the operational side of things. And they suddenly realize, you know, I can't go to the next level unless I have an understanding of the other silos, which you need to have an integrated end-to-end supply chain, and to really be the VP of supply chain or the VP director of supply chain in usually in large companies, but also in small and medium-sized companies where you wear all these hats. So I would see if I was a person with experience, particularly in one area, I'd see this as the necessary broadening to get to the next level of management in the organization, to get your salary also moved along to reflect that broader responsibility. You know, you peaked out at maybe as many bands of salary increase that's allowable before you need to make the next jump up to a level of responsibility. Hopefully, you know, that answers your question. It's obviously there's a bit of career planning there that might be unique to you.
Why don't we take one more question? And if we're waiting for that question to come in, I can ask David a really unique question. What are some of the industry trends that you're noticing, especially I can guess with COVID happening, where seeing supply chain take place and distributing vaccines as well as masks and just getting supplies to medical professionals? Are you noticing any specific industry trends?
Well, as you know, things are very volatile and changing very rapidly in supply chain over the last 16 months. And I referred to one thing where we really had to help a very large organization, a supply chain, pivot very quickly to a new model. And now we're coming into the new normal. And the reality is, as I said earlier, the next decade, we will have other supply disruptions, not necessarily pandemics. It could be global warming, climate incidences. It could be cyber interventions. It could be any number of things happening that could affect the flow of goods and services and the information flows that are required to enable them. So there's a lot of interest in the research, the bleeding edge of practice out there. What is a senior VP of supply chain worried about, or staying up late at night thinking, oh, geez, what should I do? Well, there's obviously a lot of interest in how you make a resilient supply chain. And of course, we do work research in that. What is going to be a sustainable supply chain? How do I balance things like people, plan, and profit when we're making decisions in the supply chain? As you know, there is a talent shortage in supply chain management. Every organization is saying it's hard to find good, qualified people that have the skill set to do data-driven decision making. So that talent that continue on the horizon is this continuous search for finding the best people. And that includes practitioners that graduate from this program. Very quickly, you get pressed in your organization to helping to recruit other people, sometimes to work for you, sometimes to be your colleagues, whether it's from a university or from a competitor or another organization doing similar things. Just to summarize those things, that are some of the things that are going is large focus on resilience. Of course, as a consequence of what we just went through. We just realized that some of our models of supply chain don't work and don't keep the business, it is not necessarily serving the business the best way it can, especially when things are volatile. Second thing is we're going to be having to deal with the trade-offs and synergies between supply sustainability. We have a talent shortage, and we need to find good people. We've got to bring the best minds into the profession, and we have to train them up to be analytical thinkers as well as strategic thinkers, and of course, people with very good people skills to get those projects done. You know, all the things that need to change in organizations. And we just we don't have to do them just when we want to do them, not only in the Canada 100 or the Fortune 500 companies. We want to do this, you know, in small and medium-sized companies so they can grow and be prosperous.
So I know we only have 2 more minutes, folks, but I see 2 questions here that are actually program specific. So I'll get David to answer these two questions as
Sure.
quick as possible. So Victor here has completed previous studies in procurement and supply chain and did research in supply chains resilience. And is there any specializations for supply chains resilience?
Within the MSCM program, I'm supposing
Yes,
this is with it.
absolutely.
The interesting thing is we don't have specializations. We, excuse me, we have one program. Everybody goes through the program. There's no electives, and that's why we can get you through the program in a very rigorous program that it is. It has a lot of content and a lot of things to learn, theory and applied. That's why we can get a full-time student through in 1 year and a part-timer in 2 years, and those part-timers keep their job. So there is no electives in that sense. There are things where you can get involved extracurricularly in these sort of things. And I mentioned these conferences that, for instance, we had with one of the large industrial associations, the Supply Chain Canada people. You know, our students were involved as part of the hosts for some of these activities in the first round that we had of these things. So that's how people can further some of these topics. Obviously, within the courses themselves, there is room for people in the project work they do in that to focus on specific things. Now, as we return to new normal, the interesting question will be whether there's going to be also opportunities for the research center, the George Weston's Center for Sustainable Supply Chains, and of course through the other activities that we have. For instance, for all graduate students, for instance, there's a supply chain management club where they do their own activities too, to go down to very specific point areas of interest that they might be interested. So the club was very interested last year in maybe having a special seminar on lean operations, you know, so they could really drill into, you know, how to do lean Six Sigma type stuff, which, you know, we cover a little bit in our curriculum. But, you know, there's a limit to how deep we dive into that. And so we have that option to, you know, that's sometimes an option for students to deep dive.
Last question
Hopefully
here.
that answers the question, Juanita.
Absolutely. And last question here is quickly, do we have SAP or SAP integrated in the program?
Funny you should mention that. You know, that was almost like a soft lob, that one. So we experimented last term for cohort 2 with bringing and we have an actual course on enterprise information systems, or enterprise supply chain information systems, that we were experimented for in our winter term, and we're now going to expand that into a full term course. It'll be actually it's already appears on that list of courses that you see on the website, but we've now doubled the amount of time spent on this whole idea of doing analytics through an enterprise information system like SAP. And not just SAP, it could be Oracle, it could be any other platform. And particularly getting people comfortable with things like, you know, how do I build a dashboard off that, so that would inform decision making and supply chain management. So that's one thing we've expanded for this year, will be happening in winter 2022. And of course, so for the people on this call, this will be in place already. And the instructor who developed that is also one of our full-time faculty at York University. Just actually won one of the best teacher awards for university-wide too. So we're quite excited about that project. So I think you'll probably enjoy that course very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, David, for joining us. Round of applause for you. It was great having you here today and providing such unique context into the program.
Rita, I guess the other thing did you emphasize a little bit about the supply chain consulting project, because when I was dropped out of there?
Lightly touched on it.
Yeah, this one is, you know, as I was telling you earlier, I was having these interviews with our people that just graduated, and I always ask them what courses you like, which courses you didn't like, you know, what would you improve on the program, all those kind of normal questions. And the consulting project is one that they always mention. Now, I personally actually run it, so they could have been flattering me a little bit, but I've heard it from other folks. One thing they like about that is the applied nature of the project, where they get to use a cross-functional approach from all their different courses to use some of their analytic ability, and of course develop the project management skills and the relationship management skills, which are so critical in taking knowledge and turning it into systems and processes to make supply chains work very well. So let me emphasize that too. Our program does that. We place them with real firms. Wendy, did you throw up the slides that had all the different logos on them?
No, we did not have that today.
Okay. Yeah. So anyways, we can talk a little bit about that in subsequent sessions, but these projects are done in real companies. You work in a team, and these companies expect you to deliver a project that adds value to their organization. And that goes back to the kind of theme that Juanita started off with, is this program does have theory, because we need theory to tell us what we're going to do next. What is the next supply chain or incarnation of supply chain going to look like for the next decade or 2 decades ahead? But we also have applied. We have the idea where we go into organizations, we look at what they're really concerned about and how you get things done. And that's what you'll find out a lot in programs nowadays is you want education, particularly in a very practical subject like supply chain, to be very hands-on. You want it to be experiential as much as you can. Now, during our COVID period, of course, experiential was a little tough. We couldn't go for a tour of the distribution center or the logistics large or the factory and that sort of thing. And of this summer term was the first term actually we've been able actually in 60 months to do that. But the idea of basically being very applied as well as theory and bringing them together and really bringing them home is a really important part of our concept.
Absolutely. Thank you again, David. Such great context. Today is our first webinar that we're doing in supply chain management. There'll be more to follow, and I think we should go a little bit deeper into some of the aspects of the supply chain consulting project. For more information on different events that are taking place, again, visit schulich.yorku.ca for information on quite a number of different things that we highlighted today, including aspects of scholarships, tuition fees, tips and trips can also be found on our website. Of course, if you'd like direct access to any of those questions, you can always come through me and I can answer them directly via email. So jmuwanga@schulich.yorku.ca. Of course, different events that we have as well, as you can see here. Be sure to check them out, and I'm sure David will be joining us again. He had so much to provide, and I'm sure the conversation can keep going. We've run a little bit over time, so I want to let you all go, but and thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, Jessica, for helping out in the Q&A as well. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email me.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Anita. Great job. As you see, there's some of the great staff we have at Schulich too. So not only those instructors and the other students that you're going to be hanging out with, but also some great staff to help you out.
Thanks, David. Thank you, Anita. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.